Now you had Tom Dewey. Tom Dewey had predicted that he'd have 400 of the 501 votes needed to be nominated on the first ballot. He kept nothing in reserve so he might show momentum in future ballots. When the delegates were first balloted on the afternoon of June 27th, he had only 360 to 189 for Taft and 105 for Willkie and 75 for Vandenberg. On the second ballot, Tom Dewey began to slip, falling to 338. 338, he had his 360. He had 360, but he needed 501. Then he goes down to 338 to Taft's 203. Taft is going up. And Willkie got 171. Willkie had 105, and now he's got 171. The losses greatly damaged Tom Dewey's campaign because other than the trivial losses suffered in the early rounds of balloting by Warren G. Harding in 1920, no Republican candidate had ever lost support from the previous ballot and won the nomination. Tom Dewey came under pressure from his advisors. To withdraw during the dinner break that followed the second ballot, and when the convention resumed to chants of "We want Willkie" from the packed galleries, Tom Dewey continued to slip as the convention became a two-horse race between Mike Taft and Jimmy Willkie. Listening by radio from his hotel room, Jimmy Willkie refused. It's Wendell Willkie. I'm making a joke. Willkie refused to make a deal to get support from Taft delegates, Roberto Taft, in exchange for making the Ohioan his running mate, and became convinced he would lose on the fifth ballot. Tom Dewey had planned to go to the convention and withdraw, hoping to stop Willkie by endorsing Taft, but by the time he decided this, the fifth ballot was about to begin and he couldn't get to the Civic Center in time. Wendell Willkie led with 429 delegates after the fifth ballot, while Robert Taft had 377 and Tom Dewey 57. Ooh. Tom Dewey fucking crashed and burned. The large states whose votes still were not committed to one of the two leaders were Pennsylvania. Governor Arthur James was the favorite son, and Michigan, most of whose delegates stayed with Senator Vandenberg. Although Wendell Willkie had thus far refrained from making deals to get Michigan, he agreed to allow the Republican organization there to pick the state's federal judges. Fine. You could pick the state's federal, the sixth ballot held at 12:20 a.m. on June 28th saw Taft, then Willkie take the lead as those in the gallery continued to call for Wendell Willkie. Vandenberg released his delegates, most of whom went to Wendell Willkie. Pennsylvania also broke for Wendell Willkie, making Wendell Willkie the Republican nominee for president on a vote that was made unanimously. Every single Republican